White single mom used her last $10 to save a black stranger. Then this happened. Sarah Miller stood in a parking garage at 11 p.m., staring at her phone screen. $10.47. Her last $10. Emma's medication money. Then she saw him. A black man in his mid-40s slumped against a mangled motorcycle, blood seeping through his torn work uniform. His breathing was shallow, face twisted in pain. He was dying right there on the concrete, and there was no one else around to help. You should move along," a security guard called from the stairwell. "Emergency services are tied up citywide. Could be over an hour." Sarah looked at the dying stranger, then at her phone. She thought about Emma waking up tomorrow unable to breathe, the pharmacy closing in 20 minutes, the medication she'd been rationing for 3 days. But she couldn't just walk away. She opened Uber with shaking hands, spent her last $10.47 getting him to the ER, and pressed her own emergency pain pills into his palm. She saved his life without knowing who he was. What Sarah didn't know, that impossible choice would save her daughter's life, expose a pharmaceutical conspiracy killing thousands of children, and reveal that the stranger bleeding in a parking garage was the only person on earth who could cure Emma. Because 3 months earlier, Sarah had registered Emma for a bone marrow database as a last desperate hope. And Terrence Cole was her match. Before we dive deep into this jaw-dropping story, quick pause. Drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. I love seeing our global Curious Chronicles family light up the map. If you're already hooked and craving more inspiring and captivating stories that poke curiosity like this one, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. We drop beautiful, heart-pounding stories every week that you seriously don't want to miss, so let's dive right into it. Let me take you back to the morning before that parking garage, before everything changed. Sarah's alarm screamed at 5:30 a.m. like it did every single day. She peeled herself out of bed in the studio apartment she shared with her 8-year-old daughter, Emma. The place was small, a converted storage room in a building that should have been condemned years ago, but it was home. She shuffled into the kitchen corner and opened the cabinet. 1 box of store-brand cereal, nearly empty. Half a gallon of milk in the mini-fridge, 4 days past the date. She poured what was left into Emma's bowl, added a splash of water to stretch it. Emma appeared in the doorway in her thrift store pajamas, already holding her inhaler in one small hand. "Morning, Mama." "Morning, baby." Sarah kissed her forehead and set the bowl on their folding table. She didn't pour one for herself. There wasn't enough. This was life now. Counting every dollar. Rationing every pill. Praying nothing unexpected happened because there was no cushion, no backup plan, nothing to fall back on. Sarah worked double shifts at Metro General Hospital cafeteria, not as the pediatric nurse she'd trained to be, but serving lunch trays to the nurses she used to work beside before the layoffs. $12.50 an hour. 5 days a week, 6 when they'd let her pick up extra shifts. Tips maybe added up to $15 a week if she was lucky. Her 2008 Honda had been making a grinding noise for 2 months. She knew it was the starter. $400 to fix. She didn't have $400. So every morning she turned that key and held her breath, bargaining with a machine that was one cold morning away from dying completely. And the bills never stopped coming. Emma's medication needed refilling. $847 she didn't have. Insurance had denied the claim again, 3rd time in 6 months. The doctor kept increasing Emma's dosage. "She's building resistance," he'd explained. Sarah didn't understand why her daughter needed more and more medicine just to stay stable, but she couldn't afford to question doctors. Rent was due in 5 days. She was $200 short. The landlord had already taped 1 eviction warning to her door. The electric bill sat on the counter stamped "Final Notice" in angry red letters. But Sarah didn't complain. Her mother had died when Sarah was 16, but she'd left her with one unbreakable rule: "Baby, you keep your head up and your heart soft. That's the only way you survive this world." So Sarah smiled at her co-workers even when her body screamed for rest. She asked patients how they were feeling even when she'd been standing for 8 hours straight on feet that throbbed with every step. She kept a little notebook in her purse where she wrote down one good thing about each day, no matter how impossible that felt. That Tuesday started like all the others. She dropped Emma at Mrs. Chen's apartment next door, the elderly woman who watched Emma before and after school for $20 a week, money Sarah could barely spare but couldn't survive without. She caught the 6:15 bus to the hospital. 45 minutes each way. She'd learned to sleep sitting up, head pressed against the cold window, purse clutched tight against her chest. Her shift started at 7 a.m. sharp. She served breakfast trays to patients who didn't look at her. She wiped down tables. She restocked napkins, plastic utensils, those tiny coffee creamers that always ran out by 9 a.m. The lunch rush hit at noon. Turkey sandwiches, fruit cups, coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. She smiled at doctors who didn't recognize her from when she'd worked upstairs in pediatrics, when she'd had a real nursing career, when things were different. At 2 p.m., she took her break in the employee lounge. Stale coffee from the communal pot. Half a granola bar she'd saved from yesterday. Her feet screamed. The hole in her left sneaker had spread. She could feel the linoleum through her sock now. Maria slid into the plastic chair across from her, a woman in her 50s who'd worked cafeteria services for 20 years and had seen everything. "Mija, you look like death." "I always look like this," Sarah said, managing a tired smile. "You're killing yourself for that baby. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't leftovers from someone's tray?" "Emma's worth it." Maria reached across and squeezed her hand, her grip firm and warm. "I know she is. But you can't pour from an empty cup, sweetheart. You hear me?" Sarah nodded, but they both knew she didn't have the luxury of listening. Her shift was supposed to end at 7 p.m., but James called in sick, so Sarah picked up his hours. She needed every dollar. She always needed every dollar. By the time she clocked out at 11 p.m., her feet had gone numb. She collected the tips from the jar by the register, $4.75 for a 16-hour day. She walked through the hospital's back corridors toward the parking garage, her third cup of scavenged coffee going cold in her hand. She reached her car and collapsed into the driver's seat, pulling out the crumpled bills from her pocket. $4.75 in tips, plus the $5.72 she'd managed to hold back from last week. $10.47 total. She stared at the money spread across her dashboard like it might multiply if she looked long enough. She needed $3 for tomorrow's bus fare. That left $7.47. The pharmacy wanted $847 for Emma's refill. She'd been calling for 3 days, begging. The pharmacist finally agreed to accept $50 tonight and put the rest on a payment plan, but only if Sarah got there before they closed at 11:30. Sarah checked her phone. 11:06 p.m. She had 24 minutes. She shoved her key into the ignition and turned. Click, click, click. Nothing. The starter was dead. The thing she'd been dreading for 2 months had finally happened. Her car wouldn't start, Emma's medicine was 24 minutes from unavailable, and she had exactly $10.47 to her name. Sarah's hands gripped the steering wheel. She wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. She wanted to sleep for a week. Instead, she grabbed her phone to call an Uber to the pharmacy. Maybe she could beg them to take $7. Maybe. That's when she heard it. A sound like someone drowning on dry land. Gasping. Desperate. Failing. She looked up. 30 feet away, a man was slumped against a motorcycle. The bike's front wheel was completely mangled, metal twisted like paper. The man's work uniform was torn at the shoulder, dark blood spreading across the fabric. His chest heaved in shallow, irregular bursts. His face was gray. He was dying. Sarah sat frozen, her nursing training screaming at her even as her exhausted body begged her to stay in the car. The parking garage was empty. Just her, the dying man, and the fluorescent lights humming overhead. She looked at her phone. 11:08 p.m. 22 minutes until the pharmacy closed. She looked at the man again. His eyes were unfocused, lips losing color. Internal bleeding, her nurse brain whispered. Separated shoulder. Possible concussion. He needs an ER. Now. Sir. Sarah's voice cracked as she pushed her car door open. Sir, can you hear me? The man's eyes flickered toward her. Just need a minute, he managed, though his breathing said he didn't have a minute. Sarah knelt beside him, her hand automatically going to his wrist to check his pulse. Rapid. Thready. Bad. What's your name? Terrence, he whispered. Terrence Cole. Terrence, you've been in an accident. You need a hospital. I'm calling 911. No. His hand caught her arm with surprising strength. No ambulance. They'll find me. Before Sarah could ask who they were, a security guard appeared at the stairwell entrance. You should probably go, the guard called out, not coming any closer. Emergency services are slammed tonight. Some kind of multi-car pile-up on the interstate. They're saying it could be over an hour for an ambulance. An hour. Sarah looked at Terrence Cole. In an hour, he'd be dead. She checked her phone again. 11:11 p.m. 19 minutes. $10.47 in her account. Her mind did the math she'd been trained to do as a nurse, the math that had nothing to do with money, suspected internal bleeding. Shock setting in. Without immediate intervention, this man had maybe 30 minutes. Maybe. Then her mind did the other math. An Uber to the ER was $12. She didn't have $12. But an Uber to the pharmacy was $8. She could afford that. She could get Emma's medicine, save her daughter, and call the non-emergency line to send someone eventually for this stranger. Emma's face flashed in her mind. Emma struggling to breathe tomorrow morning. Emma's inhaler running dry. Emma asking, Mama, why does my chest hurt? Sarah looked at Terrence Cole's grey face. She thought about her mother's voice. Keep your head up and your heart soft. She thought about the nurse she used to be, before the layoffs, before poverty made every choice impossible. She opened Uber on her phone. She entered the hospital's ER address. The fare popped up, $10.50. She was 3 cents short. Sarah laughed, a broken, slightly hysterical sound, and checked the couch change cup she kept in her car. 2 pennies. A dime. Close enough. Terrence, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm getting you to the hospital. Right now. She confirmed the ride. Watched her bank account drop to 35 cents. Then she dug through her purse, found the emergency bottle of pain medication she kept for her own chronic back pain from standing all day, and pressed 3 pills into Terrence's hand. Take these. They'll help until we get there. You don't have to. Terrence's voice was fading. Yeah, Sarah said, watching the Uber approach on her phone's map. I really do. The car arrived 4 minutes later. Sarah and the driver got Terrence into the back seat. She rode with him, her hand on his wrist monitoring his pulse, whispering, Stay with me. Stay with me. The ER doors opened at 11:21 p.m. Sarah Miller had 9 minutes to spare before the pharmacy closed. But she had 35 cents in her bank account. And Emma's medication was still $847 away. She had just used her last dollar to save a complete stranger. What Sarah didn't know, couldn't possibly know, was that Terrence Cole had been on his way to that same hospital to register as a bone marrow donor. For a pediatric patient he'd been matched with 3 months ago. A little girl with a rare blood disorder. A little girl named Emma Miller. And the people who ran Terrence off the road knew exactly what they were doing. The ER waiting room smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Sarah stood at the admissions desk, her arm supporting Terrence Cole as he swayed on his feet. The triage nurse, a tired-looking woman named Kelly according to her badge, barely looked up from her computer screen. Name. Terrence Cole. Sarah answered when Terrence just groaned. Insurance. Terrence's hand fumbled toward his pocket, but came up empty. Wallet must have fallen at the garage. Kelly's expression didn't change. Social security number. Terrence's eyes rolled back slightly. Sarah caught him before he collapsed. He doesn't have time for this. Sarah's voice came out sharper than she intended. He's got internal bleeding, possible rib fractures. He's going into shock. I understand, but we need. No. Sarah cut her off, and something shifted in her voice. It was the voice she'd used in pediatrics when a doctor tried to discharge a patient too early, when insurance companies denied claims for dying children, when bureaucracy tried to get between her and saving a life. You need to get him to a trauma bay right now. Document him as a John Doe if you have to. Bill me. I don't care. But if you make me stand here answering questions while this man dies in your lobby, I will make sure everyone in this hospital knows exactly who let it happen. Kelly blinked. Then she hit a button. Trauma 2, incoming patient, possible internal bleeding. 2 nurses appeared with a wheelchair. They transferred Terrence, who was barely conscious now, his skin clammy and grey. You coming? One of them asked Sarah. Sarah looked at the clock on the wall. 11:28 p.m. The pharmacy closed in 2 minutes. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed as she followed the nurses down the hallway. The pharmacy's line rang once. Twice. Walgreens Pharmacy. We're actually just closing. Please, Sarah gasped. Please, I've been calling all week about a payment plan for my daughter's prescription. Emma Miller. You said if I could get there by 11:30 with $50. It's 11:29. Even if you left right now. I know I can't make it. But please, she's 8 years old, she has a blood disorder, she's been without her medication for 3 days. I'm sorry. We close at 11:30. Policy. You'll have to come back tomorrow when we open at 9. The line went dead. Sarah stood in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, listening to silence. Tomorrow at 9. Emma would wake up at 6. 3 hours without medication. 3 hours of watching her daughter's lips turn blue, her small chest heaving, her eyes going wide with fear. One of the nurses had stopped. You coming or not? Sarah followed numbly into trauma 2. The next 30 minutes blurred together. Doctors shouting orders. Terrence on the table, his shirt cut away revealing massive bruising across his ribs and shoulder. Sarah stood against the wall, useless now, watching the organized chaos of a trauma team doing what she used to do. A doctor, young, Indian, exhausted, glanced at her. You family? No. I found him. In a parking garage. You probably saved his life. Another 20 minutes and he would have bled out internally. He turned back to Terrence. Let's get a CT. And someone page orthopedics for that shoulder. Sarah's phone buzzed. Mrs. Chen. She stepped into the hallway and answered. Sarah. Mrs. Chen's voice was tight with worry. Emma's asking for you. She's having trouble breathing. Not terrible, but... I gave her the inhaler like you showed me, but she says it's not helping much. Sarah closed her eyes. The inhaler was almost empty. She'd been rationing it too. Is she okay enough to sleep? A pause. I think so. But Sarah, she needs her real medicine. I know, Mrs. Chen. I'll figure it out. Just, can you stay with her tonight? I'll pay you extra. I promise. Mija, stop. Of course I'll stay. But you need to come home soon. She needs her mama. Sarah ended the call and slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, her nurse's clogs squeaking against the linoleum. She put her head in her hands. She'd spent her last dollar saving a stranger. Emma was home struggling to breathe. The medication wouldn't be available until 9 a.m., And even then she didn't have the $50 she'd promised. What had she done? Sarah. She looked up. A nurse stood over her, older, black, with kind eyes. It took Sarah a moment to place her. Diane. Diane worked the overnight shift at Metro General. Sarah served her coffee every night around 2 a.m. during her cafeteria shift. "What are you doing in the ER?" Diane asked. Then her eyes widened. "Wait. That man they brought in. That was you." Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. Diane sat down beside her on the floor, their backs against the wall like two exhausted soldiers. "He gonna make it?" "They think so." "And you used your last money to get him here?" It wasn't a question. Diane had seen Sarah counting change for her coffee too many times. Sarah's breath hitched. "My daughter. She needs medication. I was supposed to pick it up tonight. I chose him instead, and now Emma's home struggling to breathe and I can't. The sob came out of nowhere, ripping through her chest. She tried to stop it, tried to hold it together, but suddenly she was crying in great gasping heaves, her whole body shaking. Diane put an arm around her shoulders and held her. "You did the right thing," Diane whispered. "You hear me? You did exactly the right thing. Emma. We'll be okay. We'll figure it out. We always do." After a long moment, Sarah managed to stop crying. She wiped her face with her sleeve, embarrassed. Diane reached into her pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. "Diane, no." "For coffee," Diane said firmly, pressing it into Sarah's hand. "You look like you need it. And maybe some breakfast in the morning." "I can't take this." "Sarah Miller, you've been serving me coffee with a smile for 2 years even though I know you're working yourself to death. You helped my sister navigate her insurance claim when her son got sick. You stayed late to help the night shift clean up when we were understaffed. This isn't charity. This is family taking care of family." She stood up and brushed off her scrubs. "Now go check on that man you saved. Then go home to your baby." Sarah looked at the $20 in her hand. It wasn't enough for Emma's medication, but it was enough for tomorrow's bus fare. Enough to buy Emma breakfast. Enough to feel like maybe, just maybe, things could work out. She was about to stand when she heard raised voices from Trauma 2. "Need to see him now." "Sir, you can't just walk into a trauma bay." Sarah peered through the door window. 2 men in dark suits stood at the entrance, trying to push past security. Both were large, professional, with the kind of cold eyes that Sarah associated with people who hurt others for money. "We're family," one of them said, showing some kind of badge. "Private security. Mr. Cole's employer sent us to ensure he receives proper care." The young doctor looked uncertain. "I wasn't informed he had security." On the table, Terrence's eyes had gone wide with fear. He was trying to sit up, pulling at his forelines. "No," he gasped. "Don't let them." One of the suited men smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Cole is confused from his injury. We're here to help him." Sarah's blood went cold. She'd been a nurse long enough to know what real family looked like. These men weren't family. And Terrence was terrified. She looked at the $20 in her hand. At the suited men moving closer to Terrence. At the security guard who looked about 22 and completely outmatched. Sarah Miller had already used her last dollar tonight. What was one more impossible choice? She pushed through the door into Trauma 2, her voice cutting through the chaos with the authority of someone who'd commanded emergency rooms for years. "Mr. Cole's medical proxy has arrived," she announced, walking straight to Terrence's bedside. She took his hand. It was shaking. "I'm sorry I'm late, honey. Traffic was terrible." The doctor blinked at her. "I thought you said you weren't family." "I said I found him. I didn't say I wasn't his fiancée." Sarah looked directly at Terrence, her eyes begging him to play along. "Isn't that right, baby?" Terrence stared at her for one long, breathless moment. Then his hand squeezed hers back. "Sarah," he whispered. "Yeah, that's my Sarah." The suited men's expressions hardened. The taller one said. "We're going to need to see some identification." The door burst open again. 4 police officers entered, hands on their weapons. "We got a call about a hit and run in the Metro General parking garage," the lead officer said. "We're looking for the victim, Terrence Cole." Everyone froze. Sarah looked at Terrence, whose face had gone white. She looked at the suited men, whose hands had moved toward their jackets. She looked at the police officers, who were now staring at everyone with sudden suspicion. And she realized, with a kind of clarity that comes right before everything falls apart, that she had just stepped into something much bigger and more dangerous than a stranger's accident. "Officer," one of the suited men said smoothly, "we're private security for Mr. Cole's employer. This was just an unfortunate motorcycle accident." "Motorcycle accidents don't usually involve black SUVs fleeing the scene," the officer cut him off. "We have a witness." The suited men's hands were definitely moving toward their jackets now. Sarah's hand tightened around Terrence's, and Terrence looked at her with eyes that said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for dragging you into this." The lead officer's hand went to his gun. "Everyone stay exactly where you are," he commanded. Sarah Miller had come to the hospital to save a stranger's life. Now she was standing between armed security, police officers, and a man who somebody wanted dead badly enough to run him off the road. And somewhere across the city, Emma was struggling to breathe, waiting for a mother who might not make it home. The police escorted the suited men out of the trauma bay. Their badges turned out to be fake, security credentials from a company that didn't exist. The officers took statements, promised to investigate, and left 2 uniforms stationed outside Terrence's room. Sarah should have left then. Should have gone home to Emma. But something in Terrence's eyes kept her rooted to the plastic chair beside his hospital bed. Fear. Desperation. And something else. Guilt. It was 2 a.m. when the orthopedic surgeon finally finished with Terrence's shoulder. Separated, not dislocated. They'd pumped him full of pain medication and fluids. His color was better now, no longer that terrifying gray. Sarah sat in the chair, her head tilted back against the wall, eyes closed. Exhausted but unable to leave. "You should go home," Terrence said quietly. His voice was stronger now, clearer. "Your daughter needs you." "My daughter is asleep." Sarah didn't open her eyes. "And you're going to tell me why 2 men with fake badges just tried to get to you in a trauma bay?" Silence. Sarah opened her eyes and looked at him. "I lied to the police for you. Told them you were my fiancé so they'd let me stay and make sure those men didn't come back. I used my last $10 getting you here. My daughter is home without her medication because of you." Her voice didn't rise, but it hardened. "So you're going to tell me everything, Terrence Cole. And you're going to tell me right now." Terrence stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Then he laughed, a broken, bitter sound. "You know what's funny? I was trying to save kids like your daughter. That's what all of this was for." He turned his head to look at her. "I'm a quality control inspector for MedCorp Pharmaceuticals. Or I was, until tonight." MedCorp. Sarah's brain tried to place the name. That's the company that makes pediatric medications, specialized treatments for rare blood disorders, childhood cancers, genetic conditions. Terrence's jaw tightened. They make the medications that keep dying kids alive, and they've been diluting them for profit. Sarah went very still. 6 months ago, I noticed discrepancies in our batch reports, Terrence continued. Active ingredients weren't matching the formulations. At first I thought it was just calibration errors in our testing equipment. But then I started checking the source data. The raw materials coming in. The finished products going out. He closed his eyes. They were cutting the medications by 30 to 40%. replacing active ingredients with inert filler, making it look right on paper, but the medicine going to sick kids was essentially watered down. "That's not possible," Sarah whispered. "There are regulations. The FDA. The FDA tests samples. MedCorp sends them clean batches for testing and ships the diluted ones to pharmacies. They've been doing it for over a year." Terrence's hands clenched into fists. "Do you know what happens when a child with a blood disorder gets 40% less medication than they need?" Sarah's throat went dry. "Their condition worsens. The doctors increase the dosage." "Exactly. The kids get sicker. The dosages go up. The families pay more. MedCorp's profits soar. And the children become dependent on increasingly higher doses of medication that barely works." His voice cracked. "It's genius, really. Create the problem. Sell the solution. Rinse and repeat." Sarah's mind was racing. Emma's medication had been increased 3 times in 6 months. 3 times. The doctors said she was building resistance, that it was normal for her condition. But what if it wasn't? What medication? Sarah heard herself ask. Which ones were diluted? Terrence reached for his phone on the bedside table. His hand shook as he unlocked it. "I have everything. Quality control reports. Batch numbers. Shipping manifests. I was on my way to meet a journalist from the Washington Post when that SUV ran me off the road." He pulled up a file and held the phone toward her. "These are the medications in the current dilution scheme." Sarah took the phone with trembling hands. The list was long. Too long. Medications for leukemia, cystic fibrosis, sickle cell disease, and there, fourth from the top, hemostat pediatric blood disorder treatment. Emma's medication. Sarah's vision blurred. She scrolled down to the detail report. Batch numbers. Dilution percentages. Dates. The medication Emma had been taking for the past 6 months was 42% filler. 42%. "Oh God," Sarah whispered. "Oh my God." She thought about Emma's breathing getting worse. The doctors increasing her dosage. The prescription costs climbing from $400 to $847. Sarah rationing pills, cutting them in half, making her daughter suffer to stretch the supply. And the medication was fake. Not fake. Worse than fake. Just real enough to keep Emma alive. Just weak enough to keep her sick. How many children? Sarah's voice sounded strange, distant. How many kids are on these medications? Nationally, about 3,000. 3,000 children. 3,000 families like hers, drowning in medical debt, watching their kids deteriorate, being told it was normal, that it was the disease progressing, that they needed to pay more for higher doses. Sarah stood up so fast the chair scraped across the floor. "We have to tell someone. The police, the FDA, the..." "You think I didn't try?" Terrence's voice rose, then he winced, his shoulder reminding him not to move. "I went through proper channels. I filed reports with my supervisors. They buried them. I contacted the FDA's whistleblower line. No response. I reached out to 3 journalists before tonight. 2 stopped returning my calls. 1 died in a car accident last month." He looked at her with haunted eyes. "MedCorp has money, Sarah. Enough money to buy silence. Enough to make problems disappear. The men tonight. Corporate security. Or worse. I don't know anymore." He reached for her arm. "You need to leave. Now. Before they connect you to me. Before they realize you're not actually my fiancé." Sarah jerked her arm away. "I'm not going anywhere." "Sarah, these people ran me off the road with a 2-ton vehicle. They sent armed men into a hospital. What do you think they'll do when they find out you're a single mother with no resources, no protection? They're already killing my daughter." The words exploded out of her. Maybe not with a car or a gun, but they're killing her just the same. Slow. Profitable. Legal. She grabbed Terrence's phone from the bed. This evidence. Is it backed up? Encrypted cloud storage. The journalist has the access codes. Then we finish what you started. Sarah's hands were shaking, but her voice was steel. You were going to meet this journalist. We still do it. Tomorrow. Today. Whenever. But we don't stop. You have a daughter to protect. Exactly. I have a daughter. Who is dying because of these people? How many other mothers are watching their kids suffer? How many other families are choosing between rent and medication that doesn't even work? Sarah leaned close, her eyes blazing. I just spent my last $10 saving your life, Terrence Cole. My daughter is home struggling to breathe because I chose you over her medication. So you're going to help me make that choice mean something. Terrence stared at her. You're serious. I have never been more serious about anything in my life. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, the journalist. Rebecca Chen. She works for the Post's investigative unit. She's expecting me to call when, if, I survive tonight. Then call her. Now. Terrence hesitated, then nodded. He took back his phone and scrolled through his contacts. Sarah paced the small room, her mind working through everything she'd just learned. Emma's deteriorating condition. The increased dosages. The astronomical costs. All of it deliberate. All of it designed to extract maximum profit from desperate families. Behind her, she heard Terrence speaking quietly into the phone. Rebecca? Yeah, it's me. I'm alive. They tried. But I had help. A pause. Listen, there's been a development. I have someone who wants to help. A mother whose daughter is on one of the diluted medications. Her testimony combined with my evidence could... He stopped. His face went pale. What? When? Are you sure? Sarah turned. What happened? Terrence lowered the phone slowly. Rebecca's house was broken into 3 hours ago. While she was home. 2 men in masks. They didn't steal anything. Just destroyed her computers, her phones, her files, and left a message. His voice dropped to a whisper. They told her to forget about the pharmaceutical story. Or next time, they wouldn't just break her equipment. Sarah's blood ran cold. She's out, Terrence continued. She can't help us. She's terrified. She has kids too. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls closing in. So what do we do? Sarah asked. Before Terrence could answer, his phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Terrence opened it. Sarah watched his face drain of color. What? What is it? Wordlessly, he turned the phone toward her. The message contained a single photograph. Sarah's apartment building. Taken from across the street. Focused on one specific window. Emma's window. Below the photo, walk away. Or we finish what we started tonight. And next time, we won't miss. Sarah's hands went numb. The phone nearly slipped from her fingers. They knew where Emma lived. They knew which window was hers. They were watching her daughter right now. Sarah. Terrence's voice was urgent. You need to get out of here. Take your daughter and run. Tonight. Get as far away from me as possible. Sarah's phone rang. Mrs. Chen. At 2:47 a.m. Sarah's heart stopped. She answered with shaking hands. Mrs. Chen. Sarah. The old woman's voice was tight with fear. There's a car outside. Black SUV. It's been sitting there for 10 minutes. 2 men inside. Just watching the building. Sarah looked at Terrence's phone. At the photo of Emma's window. At the threat. She looked at Terrence, whose eyes said he was sorry, so sorry for dragging her into this nightmare. And she made a choice. "Mrs. Chen," Sarah said, her voice surprisingly calm. "Lock all the doors. Don't let anyone in. I'm coming home right now. And when I get there..." She looked at the evidence on Terrence's phone. At the list of 3,000 dying children. At her daughter's medication staring back at her from a corporate kill list. "When I get there, we're going to need to talk to the police. The real police. Because I'm not running. Not anymore." She hung up and looked at Terrence. "Tell me how to access those cloud files," she said. "Because if they want to threaten my daughter, I'm going to make sure the whole world knows why." Outside the hospital room, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy. Purposeful. Multiple sets. The police officers stationed at the door shouted something. Then there was a sound like thunder. Gunfire. Sarah and Terrence locked eyes. The door burst open. The door burst open. Not gunmen. A nurse and security guard, responding to the commotion in the hallway. The gunfire had been a food cart crashing, knocked over during a scuffle with someone trying to get past the police checkpoint. False alarm. But Sarah's heart was still hammering when she finally made it home at 3 a.m. The black SUV was gone. Mrs. Chen met her at the door, her weathered face creased with worry. "She's burning up," Mrs. Chen whispered. "Started about an hour ago." Sarah rushed to Emma's bedside. Her daughter lay twisted in damp sheets, her small chest rising and falling too fast. Sarah pressed her hand to Emma's forehead. "Hot. Too hot. Mama." Emma's eyes fluttered open, glassy with fever. "I don't feel good." "I know, baby. I know." Sarah's hands moved on autopilot, checking Emma's pulse, her breathing, the color of her lips. "All wrong. Everything wrong. Let's get you some medicine, okay?" She went to the bathroom and opened the prescription bottle. 3 pills left. 3 pills of medication she now knew was 42% useless filler. Sarah stared at the pills in her palm. These weren't keeping Emma alive. They were just keeping her sick enough to need more. But they were all she had. She crushed half a pill, mixed it with water, and helped Emma swallow it. Then she climbed into bed beside her daughter, pulling her close, feeling Emma's fever-hot skin against her own. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. "Sarah, what's happening?" "Those men in the car." "Go home, Mrs. Chen. Please. Lock your doors. Don't answer if anyone asks about me or Emma." Sarah's voice was hollow. "And thank you. For everything." The old woman hesitated, then nodded and left. Sarah held Emma through the dark hours, listening to her labored breathing, feeling her small body tremble with chills despite the fever. She thought about Terrence's files. 3,000 children. 3,000 families trapped in the same nightmare. And she thought about the photograph. Emma's window. The threat. What else can they take? Everything, Sarah realized. They could take everything. But only if she let them. Somewhere around 5 a.m., Emma's fever finally broke. She fell into restless sleep, her breathing easier. Sarah eased out of bed and stood at the window, looking down at the empty street where the SUV had been. She pulled out her phone and called her supervisor at the hospital cafeteria. "Janet? It's Sarah Miller. I can't come in today. My daughter's sick." She closed her eyes, knowing what this meant. "I know it's short notice. I know I used my last sick day in December. I can't leave her." Janet's sigh was audible. "Sarah, you're a good worker, but I can't keep making exceptions. If you don't show up today, I'll have to write you up. 3 write-ups, Anne." "I know. I'm sorry." Sarah ended the call. There went her job. Probably. Maybe. She didn't care anymore. At 7 a.m., she woke Emma gently. "Baby, we need to go to the clinic." The free clinic didn't open until 9, but the line was already forming when they arrived at 8:30. Sarah signed in, took a number, 47, and settled into a plastic chair with Emma curled against her side. 2 hours later, a tired physician's assistant examined Emma, listened to her lungs, and frowned at her chart. Her blood work is concerning. Her levels should be stabilizing with the medication increase, but they're actually declining. She looked at Sarah over her glasses. When did you say she started the new dosage? 3 months ago. And it's not helping. Sarah's throat tightened. No, it's not helping. Because it's not real medicine, she wanted to scream. Because they're poisoning my daughter for profit. The PA wrote something on her chart. I'm going to recommend we consult with her specialist. These medications are expensive, I know, but if her current treatment isn't working, it won't work. Sarah stood abruptly. Thank you for your time. She took Emma's hand and left before the PA could ask questions Sarah couldn't answer yet. By noon, they were back at Metro General Hospital. Sarah found Terrence in his room, dressed in his ruined work clothes, signing discharge papers. Sarah. He looked surprised. Then he saw Emma and his face went pale. Is this? This is my daughter. Sarah's voice was flat. Emma, say hello to Mr. Cole. Emma, shy and feverish, gave a small wave. Terrence stared at her like she was a ghost. This was the face behind the statistics. The child whose medication he'd found on the dilution list. Real. Breathing. Dying by degrees. They're discharging you? Sarah asked. Yeah. Against medical advice. But I can't stay here. Too exposed. He hesitated. Sarah, about last night. You need a place to stay. What? Those men know where you live. They probably know where you work, where you eat, everywhere. You need to disappear for a few days. Sarah adjusted her grip on Emma's hand. My couch pulls out. It's not much, but it's somewhere they won't look. Yet. Sarah, I can't put you and Emma in more danger. We're already in danger. They photographed my daughter's window. They're watching us. Sarah's voice hardened. But here's what they don't know. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. I'm going to help you finish what you started. Terrence glanced at Emma, then back at Sarah. You want to go public. With a sick child. Against a corporation that's already tried to kill me once. Yes. Sarah, they ran me off the road with a 2-ton vehicle. They threatened a journalist in her own home. What do you think they'll do to a single mother with no money, no resources, no protection? Sarah looked down at Emma, who was leaning heavily against her leg, exhausted from the morning's clinic visit. She thought about the medication bottle at home with 2 pills left. She thought about the $847 she didn't have. The job she was about to lose. The rent she couldn't pay. She thought about 3,000 other children. And she looked Terrence Cole directly in the eye. They're already killing my daughter, she said quietly. Just slowly. Legally. Profitably. So tell me, Terrence, what else can they take from me? My apartment? I'm 3 weeks from eviction. My job? I probably lost it this morning. My savings? I spent my last $10 on you. Her voice didn't rise, but it cut like steel. I have nothing left to lose except Emma. And if I don't fight back, I lose her anyway. Terrence was silent for a long moment. Your testimony, he finally said. A mother talking about her daughter's deterioration, the increased dosages, the financial devastation. Combined with my evidence, the quality control reports, the batch numbers, the dilution percentages. He nodded slowly. It could work. If we can find a journalist willing to risk it. Rebecca Chen is out. Completely. But there are others. Smaller outlets, maybe. Independent investigators. He pulled out his phone. I have contacts. People I trust. We'd need to move fast, though. Before MedCorp realizes I survived and went to ground. Sarah nodded. Then let's move fast. Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. Mama, I'm tired. I know, baby. Let's get you home. Sarah looked at Terrence. You coming? He grabbed his jacket, torn and bloodstained from the accident. Yeah, I'm coming. They took a cab to Sarah's apartment, Terrence insisting on paying despite Sarah's protests. Inside, Sarah settled Emma on the couch with a blanket and what was left of their crackers. Terrence stood in the middle of the tiny studio, taking in the space. The cracked walls. The ancient refrigerator. The stack of overdue bills on the counter. This was poverty. Real, grinding, desperate poverty. And Sarah was willing to risk it all. Okay, he said, pulling out his laptop. Let me make some calls. For the next 3 hours, Sarah listened to Terrence work the phones. Calling contacts. Explaining the situation. Getting hung up on. Trying again. Emma dozed fitfully on the couch. Sarah administered the last full pill from the bottle at 4 p.m., crushing it and mixing it with juice, watching her daughter swallow poison disguised as medicine. Finally, at 6 p.m., Terrence's face changed. Yes, he said into the phone. Yes, I can get you everything. Documentation, witnesses, the full supply chain. A pause. Tomorrow morning? We can do that. Thank you. Thank you so much. He ended the call and looked at Sarah with something like hope. Marcus Webb. Independent investigative journalist. He's done pharmaceutical exposés before. He wants to meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. Terrence's hands were shaking. Sarah, this is real. This could actually happen. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. Where? Public place. A cafe downtown. He'll bring a photographer, maybe a videographer. He wants your full story, Emma's medical history, the costs, everything. And he wants to see her. Meet her. Sarah looked at Emma sleeping on the couch, her face still too pale, her breathing still too labored. She'll be there, Sarah said. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Sarah moved to the peephole. A man stood in the hallway. 30s, business casual, holding a manila envelope. Not the suited men from the hospital. But not someone she recognized either. Yes. Sarah called through the door. Sarah Miller? I have a delivery for you. Legal documents. Need your signature. Sarah's stomach dropped. Eviction papers. Had to be. She opened the door with the chain still latched. The man smiled pleasantly and held up the envelope. Just need you to sign here. Sarah unlatched the chain and reached for the clipboard. The man's smile vanished. He slammed the door open, shoving Sarah backward. She hit the floor hard, her head cracking against the corner of the coffee table. Emma screamed. Terrence lunged forward, but the man was already inside, and he wasn't alone. 2 more men crowded through the door behind him. One of them locked it. The other pulled out a gun. Mr. Cole, the first man said pleasantly. You've been very difficult to find. And Ms. Miller, such a touching story, trying to save your daughter. But I'm afraid this ends tonight. He looked at Emma, trembling on the couch, starting with loose ends. Sarah's vision blurred. Blood trickled down her temple where she'd hit the table. She could hear Emma sobbing, could see Terrence frozen with his hands raised, could feel the cold reality of the gun pointed at her daughter. Then Mrs. Chen's voice cut through the chaos from the hallway. I'm calling the police. I already dialed 911. The men exchanged glances. The one with the gun hesitated. We're gone, the leader said sharply. He looked at Terrence. You have 24 hours to make this right. Or we come back. And next time, we won't knock. They were out the door in seconds, footsteps pounding down the stairwell. Sarah crawled to Emma, pulling her daughter into her arms. It's okay, baby. It's okay. They're gone. But it wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. The police came, took statements, told Sarah they'd increase patrols in the area. Left. That night, Sarah didn't sleep. She sat on the couch with Emma tucked against her side and Terrence in the chair across from them, his laptop open, making plans for the morning meeting. Morning came too fast. At 8:30 a.m., Sarah dropped Emma at school despite every instinct screaming to keep her close. But Emma needed normal, needed to feel safe. And Sarah needed her away from whatever was about to happen. "I love you," Sarah whispered, kissing Emma's forehead. "Mrs. Chen will pick you up at 3, okay?" "Okay, Mama." Emma hugged her tight. "Are you still sick?" Sarah touched the bandage on her temple. "Just clumsy. I'm fine." By 9 a.m., Sarah and Terrence sat across from Marcus Webb in a bustling downtown cafe. Marcus was younger than Sarah expected, early 30s, with intense eyes and a recorder already running on the table between them. "Start from the beginning," Marcus said. "Everything." Sarah told him about Emma's diagnosis 3 years ago. The medication that worked at first. The gradual decline. The dosage increases. The costs spiraling from manageable to impossible. The rationing. The fear. Terrence showed him the files. Quality control reports. Batch numbers matching Emma's prescription bottles. Dilution percentages. Profit projections showing MedCorp's revenue increase directly correlating with children getting sicker. Marcus's face grew darker with each document. "This is massive. This is criminal negligence on a scale I've never." Sarah's phone rang. Emma's school. Her blood turned to ice. "I have to take this." She answered, her hand shaking. "Hello? Ms. Miller? This is Principal Davidson." Emma collapsed during recess. "She's not breathing well. The ambulance is taking her to Metro General." Sarah was already running. She didn't remember leaving the cafe. Didn't remember Terrence shouting behind her or Marcus calling something about meeting later. She just ran. The Uber seemed to take hours. Sarah sat in the back seat, her phone pressed to her ear, talking to the ER nurse who'd called. "She's stable for now. But Ms. Miller, her oxygen levels are extremely low. We're running tests, but whatever medication she's been on, it's not working anymore." Because it was never real, Sarah wanted to scream. Because they poisoned her for profit. She burst through the ER doors at 9:47 a.m. Emma lay in a pediatric trauma bay, an oxygen mask covering her small face. Her lips were blue-tinged despite the oxygen. Monitors beeped frantically. Nurses moved around her with practiced urgency. "Emma." Sarah rushed to her side, grabbing her daughter's hand. "Baby, I'm here. Mama's here." Emma's eyes fluttered open. "Can't breathe." I know, baby. The doctors are helping you." Sarah looked at the attending physician, a woman in her 50s she didn't recognize. "What's happening?" "Her blood isn't oxygenating properly. Her condition has deteriorated significantly. We're stabilizing her now, but..." The doctor glanced at Emma's chart. "Ms. Miller, when was the last time her medication was evaluated by her specialist?" 3 months ago. "And they increased her dosage?" "Yes." The doctor's expression said everything. The medication should have made Emma better. Instead, she was dying. Sarah stayed with Emma for the next 2 hours. They moved her to the ICU. Started her on 4 fluids and stronger oxygen support. Emma drifted in and out of consciousness, each breath a struggle. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Terrence. "Marcus wants to publish tomorrow. Needs your final approval." "This is it, Sarah. We can expose them." Sarah looked at Emma's pale face, at the machines keeping her alive. Her phone buzzed again. "Terrence, 2 men just showed up at your apartment. I'm okay. Didn't let them in. But Sarah, they're not stopping. Before she could respond, there was a knock on the ICU room door. A doctor entered. Tall, mid-40s, expensive suit under his white coat. Sarah had never seen him before. Ms. Miller? I'm Dr. Richard Howell. I've been consulting on Emma's case. He smiled warmly, professionally. I think I can help. Something in his smile made Sarah's skin crawl. I'm listening, she said carefully. Dr. Howell pulled up a chair, his manner almost conspiratorial. Emma's condition is quite rare. But as it happens, MedCorp Pharmaceuticals, I believe you're familiar with them, they're running a clinical trial for an enhanced version of her medication. Significantly more effective. And he paused meaningfully. Completely free for trial participants. Sarah's blood went cold. MedCorp, she repeated. Yes. Wonderful company. Very committed to pediatric health. Dr. Howell opened his tablet, showing her official-looking documents. The trial would start immediately. Emma would receive the enhanced medication today. Within 48 hours, we'd see dramatic improvement. And the entire treatment, normally $2,000 per month, would be provided at no cost for as long as she needs it. He let that sink in. Real medication. The kind that would actually save Emma. Free. Starting today. What's the catch? Sarah asked quietly. Dr. Howell's smile never wavered. No catch. Just standard trial paperwork. Consent forms. A non-disclosure agreement about the trial's existence. We don't want competitors knowing about our developments, you understand. And he met her eyes directly. A statement confirming that Emma's previous medication was administered as prescribed and you have no complaints about her prior treatment. There it was. Stay quiet about the dilution. Sign away her right to speak. Accept the bribe. And Emma lives. Or refuse. Expose MedCorp. Help Terrence publish the story. And watch Emma die on diluted medication that would never save her. I need to think about it, Sarah whispered. Of course. But Emma's condition is quite serious. I'd hate for you to wait too long and... He trailed off delicately. Well, time isn't on our side here, Ms. Miller. He left the paperwork on the bedside table and walked out. Sarah stared at the documents. At the consent form that would save her daughter and doom 3,000 others. Her phone buzzed. Terrence, Sarah, they just offered me $500,000 to disappear. Showed me photos of you and Emma at school this morning. They said, wouldn't want anything to happen to the people you've dragged into this. I can't let them hurt her because of me. I'm sorry. I'm backing out. Another text. Take the deal if they offer you one. Save Emma. Forget the story. Please. Sarah looked at Emma, struggling for every breath. She looked at the consent forms. She looked at her phone, at Terrence's surrender. The door opened. A nurse, not one Sarah recognized, entered with a syringe. Dr. Howell asked me to start Emma's trial medication. If you've decided to participate. I haven't signed anything yet, Sarah said. Oh, that's fine. We can do the paperwork after. Dr. Howell just wanted to get Emma feeling better as soon as possible. The nurse smiled kindly. Poor thing's been suffering so long. This will help. I promise. She moved toward Emma's foreline. Sarah's hand shot out, gripping the nurse's wrist. I said I haven't decided. The nurse's smile faded. Ms. Miller, your daughter is in critical condition. Every minute we wait. Get out. I'm trying to help. Get out. The nurse left, her expression hardening. Sarah's phone rang. Marcus Webb. Sarah, I'm at the police station. Someone called in a tip that Terrence Cole has been threatening you and your daughter. They're looking for him. This is MedCorp, Sarah. They're trying to separate you two, discredit him before we publish. His voice was urgent. I need to know, are we still doing this? Because if we are, I need to run the story tonight, before they shut us down completely. Sarah looked at Emma, at the consent forms, at her phone showing Terrence's texts about backing out. She thought about 3,000 children. She thought about the medication bottle at home, empty now, that had never been real medicine at all. She thought about the choice she'd made in a parking garage, to save a stranger with her last $10. And she made another impossible choice. Run it, Sarah said. Run the story tonight. She hung up and tore the consent forms in half. The door burst open. Dr. Howell stood there, his professional smile completely gone. Behind him, 2 security guards. Ms. Miller, I'm afraid you're becoming a disruption to patient care. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the ICU. I'm not leaving my daughter. Then I'll have to call hospital security to remove you. And while you're gone, I'll be forced to make critical medical decisions for Emma as her attending physician. His voice dropped. Decisions that may or may not include the trial medication, depending on whether I believe it's in her best interest. Sarah understood the threat. Leave voluntarily, lose access to Emma. Stay, get forcibly removed, lose access to Emma. Either way, they'd give Emma the bribe medication and make Sarah complicit. Her phone buzzed. Terrence, they're at the apartment. They have a warrant. They're arresting me for assault. They're saying I attacked those men last night. Sarah, I'm sorry. I tried. Another buzz. Mrs. Chen, Sarah, men are asking about Emma's school pickup. I told them nothing. But they know where she goes. What do I do? Sarah's world was collapsing. The story was running tonight. Terrence was being arrested. MedCorp was threatening Emma. And Sarah was about to be removed from the hospital. She looked at Emma, unconscious now, struggling for air. Then she looked at Dr. Howell. Make your call, Sarah said quietly. Have me removed. But you should know, the story's already running. By tonight, the whole world will know what MedCorp did, what you're part of. And I will testify. About this conversation. About your bribe. About everything. Dr. Howell's face went red. You're making a terrible mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. He signaled the guards. They were reaching for Sarah when a nurse, not the one from before, rushed in. Dr. Howell, we have a problem. There's a federal marshal in the lobby asking about patient Emma Miller. Something about a court order. Everyone froze. Sarah's phone rang again. Unknown number. She answered. Ms. Miller? This is Special Agent Rebecca Torres, FBI. We've been investigating MedCorp Pharmaceuticals for 6 months. A journalist just contacted us with evidence that corroborates our case. Evidence from Terrence Cole. And testimony from you. A pause. We're at Metro General Hospital right now. Don't let anyone give your daughter any medication until we get there. Do you understand? Sarah's legs nearly gave out. I understand, she whispered. Dr. Howell's face had gone white. He backed toward the door. Nobody move, Sarah said, her voice stronger now. The FBI is coming. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. The door opened. But it wasn't the FBI. It was the same 2 men from last night. And this time, they weren't here to threaten. They were here to finish it. The 2 men weren't alone this time. Behind them, 3 federal agents in FBI windbreakers pushed past, weapons drawn. Hands where we can see them. Agent Torres, a woman in her 40s with steel-gray hair, commanded. The 2 men froze. One reached for his jacket. Don't. Torres shouted. Hospital security flooded the hallway. Dr. Howell backed against the wall, his hands raised. The room erupted into controlled chaos, agents securing the men, nurses evacuating nearby patients, alarms triggering as people rushed past emergency equipment. Through it all, Sarah stood beside Emma's bed, her hand gripping her daughter's, refusing to move. "Ms. Miller," Agent Torres said, holstering her weapon. "I need you to come with me. We have questions." "I'm not leaving my daughter." Torres glanced at Emma, small, pale, struggling to breathe. Her expression softened. "Then I'll question you here. But first," she turned to the nurse who'd tried to administer medication earlier. "Nobody touches this child until our medical team clears every substance in this room." "Understood." The nurse nodded, terrified. For the next hour, Sarah watched FBI agents swarm the ICU. They photographed everything, confiscated Emma's chart, removed the syringe the nurse had brought, questioned Dr. Howell in the hallway while he insisted he'd done nothing wrong, was just offering a legitimate clinical trial. "A trial that doesn't exist in any federal database," Agent Torres said coldly, returning to Emma's room. "Convenient." By noon, the ICU had quieted. Emma remained stable, barely. The machines still breathed for her. Her color was still too pale. But she was alive. Sarah sat in the chair beside her bed, numb with exhaustion and adrenaline crash. The door opened. Terrence walked in, flanked by a hospital security guard Sarah recognized, Marcus Thompson, who'd worked at Metro General for 15 years and had a reputation for being incorruptible. "Sarah." Terrence looked like he'd aged a decade overnight. His arm was in a fresh sling, face bruised. "Are you okay? Is Emma?" "She's alive. The FBI got here before." Sarah couldn't finish. Terrence pulled up a chair, wincing. Marcus positioned himself by the door. "They arrested me this morning," Terrence said quietly. "Bogus assault charges from last night. But when the FBI heard about it, they intervened. Agent Torres said they've been investigating MedCorp for 6 months. Medical fraud. They just needed someone willing to testify." He looked at Sarah with something like awe. "You did it. You didn't back down." "I haven't done anything yet. Emma's still dying." They sat in silence, watching Emma's chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. Finally, Terrence spoke. "Sarah, I've been thinking about what happens next. The trial, the testimony, the media circus. It's going to be brutal. And you." He gestured at Emma. "You have her to protect. I can do this alone. You can take the deal, get Emma real medication, disappear from the story. I'll handle the rest." Sarah didn't look at him. "You're backing out." "Not backing out. Just letting you off the hook. Your daughter matters more than this case. More than any case." "How many kids?" Sarah asked quietly. "What? How many children are on these diluted medications?" "You said 3,000. How many are like Emma? Poor families, rationing doses, watching their kids get sicker, going bankrupt trying to save them." Terrence was quiet for a long moment. "Most of them. These medications target rare conditions. The families are desperate. MedCorp knows they'll pay anything, sacrifice anything." His voice dropped. "Probably 2/3. Maybe 2,000 kids. 2,000 children. 2,000 mothers sitting in chairs like Sarah's, watching their babies struggle to breathe. 2,000 families choosing between rent and medicine that didn't even work." Sarah looked at Emma, then at Terrence. "I'm not taking the deal," she said. "I'm testifying. With you. Against MedCorp. Against all of it. Sarah, they tried to kill us. And they'll keep trying to kill other people if we don't stop them." Sarah's voice was steel. "Emma's dying because of them. But she's not the only one. And if I stay silent to save her, if I take their bribe and their blood money, what do I tell her when she grows up? What do I say when she asks why I didn't fight back? You tell her you kept her alive. That's enough." "No." Sarah stood, walking to the window. It's not enough. Not anymore. Before Terrence could respond, the door opened. Dr. Howell walked in, no longer smiling, no longer professional. Just cold. Ms. Miller, I've consulted with hospital administration. Your refusal to consent to Emma's treatment constitutes medical neglect. I'm required by law to report this to Child Protective Services. Sarah turned to face him. Do it. Dr. Howell blinked. Excuse me. Call CPS. Report me for refusing experimental medication from a company currently under FBI investigation for fraud. I want it documented. I want them to investigate exactly why my daughter needs treatment in the first place. I want them to look at every prescription, every dosage increase, every batch number. Sarah stepped closer. And when they do, they're going to find what Terrence found. What the FBI is finding. That MedCorp has been poisoning children for profit. So yes, doctor, make your call. Dr. Howell's face went purple. You're condemning your own daughter. You condemned her 6 months ago when you started diluting her medication. I did no such thing. Then you won't mind testifying to that. Under oath. To the FBI. Sarah's voice was deadly quiet. Get out of my daughter's room. Dr. Howell opened his mouth to respond. And Emma's monitors erupted in chaos. Alarms screamed. The heart rate monitor flatlined. Emma's body convulsed once. Violently. Code blue. ICU room 4. Someone shouted in the hallway. Sarah lunged for Emma, but Terrence caught her. Let them work. That's my daughter. Medical staff flooded the room. A doctor Sarah didn't recognize pushed her aside. Step back. Sarah watched in horror as they swarmed Emma's tiny body. Someone started chest compressions. Another readied a defibrillator. Medications appeared from crash cart. Charging to 50. Clear. Emma's small body jerked. The monitor stayed flat. Again. Charging to 100. Sarah's legs gave out. Terrence held her up, his face gray. Clear. Another jolt. Emma's body arched. A beep. Then another. Then a weak, irregular rhythm on the monitor. We've got sinus rhythm, the doctor said. But it's unstable. Get me a cardiology consult. Now. They worked for another 10 minutes that felt like hours. Finally, Emma stabilized, barely. Her heart rate was weak but present. Her breathing more labored than before, but there. The medical team filed out, leaving Sarah alone with Emma, Terrence, and Marcus the security guard. Sarah collapsed into the chair, her whole body shaking. Terrence knelt beside her. Sarah. His phone rang. He glanced at it, then froze. His face went absolutely white. What? Sarah asked. What is it? Terrence stared at the screen like it was a ghost. It's the National Bone Marrow Registry. They've been trying to reach me for 3 days. His hands trembled as he answered. Hello? Yes, this is Terrence Cole. A pause. Yes. I'm still interested in donating. When, his eyes went wide. What? No, I wasn't aware. When did? Another pause. And the patient is in critical condition? Yes. Yes, I understand. I can be there tomorrow for testing. He ended the call and looked at Sarah with an expression she couldn't read. What? She demanded. What was that about? 3 months ago, I registered as a bone marrow donor. Company health fair. I honestly forgot about it. Terrence's voice was shaking. They found a match. A pediatric patient with a rare blood disorder who needs an urgent transplant. They've been trying to contact me since the accident, but my phone was damaged and he stopped. And what? Sarah pressed. Terrence pulled up the email on his phone. Scrolled to the patient information, coded for privacy, but with basic details. Age, gender, diagnosis, hospital location. He turned the screen towards Sarah. Patient, female, 8 years old, diagnosis, genetic blood disorder, same as Emma's rare condition, hospital, Metro general status, critical, transplant needed within 72 hours or patient will not survive. Sarah's breath stopped. When did they contact you? She whispered. The initial match was confirmed 3 months ago. They scheduled my donation appointment for. Terrence checked the email. 2 nights ago. The night I was run off the road. Sarah looked at Emma, struggling in the hospital bed. She looked at Terrence, who'd been matched 3 months ago. She looked at the patient details. Same age, same diagnosis, same hospital. Terrence, she said slowly. What's the patient identification number? He scrolled down. Read it aloud. Sarah grabbed Emma's medical chart from the bedside table. Flipped to the registry enrollment page from 3 months ago when her specialist had suggested it as a last hope option. Found Emma's donor registry ID number. It matched. Oh my God, Sarah breathed. Oh my God. Terrence stared at her, understanding dawning. Emma. The patient I was matched with. It's Emma. They looked at each other in absolute shock. Sarah had used her last $10 to save a stranger in a parking garage. That stranger was her daughter's only bone marrow match. The only person who could save Emma's life. And MedCorp had tried to kill him. They knew, Sarah whispered. They knew you were Emma's match. That's why they ran you off the road. Not just to stop you from exposing the dilution scheme, but to prevent the transplant, Terrence finished, his voice hollow. To keep Emma dependent on their medication. Forever. Marcus spoke from the door, his voice urgent. We need to tell Agent Torres. Now. But before anyone could move, Terrence's phone buzzed with another message. From an unknown number. He opened it. A photograph of the bone marrow registry database. Emma's file. Terrence's donor match highlighted. And typed across it in red letters. Match cancelled. Donor disqualified due to recent trauma and injuries. Patient returned to waiting list. Estimated new match time, 18 to 24 months. Below that, your accident was unfortunate, Mr. Cole. Even more unfortunate that you'll never be medically cleared to donate now. Such a shame about the little girl. Sarah felt the world tilt. Emma needed a transplant within 72 hours. Terrence was her only match. And MedCorp had just disqualified him by causing injuries that made him ineligible to donate. They'd killed Emma without ever touching her. The monitor beside Emma's bed began alarming again. Weaker than before. Fading. Sarah snatched Terrence's phone, staring at the message. The words blurred through her tears. No, she whispered. No, this can't, they can't just. Agent Torres burst through the door, Marcus right behind her. We intercepted a communication. MedCorp's legal team is filing an emergency injunction to block. She stopped, seeing their faces. What happened? Terrence showed her the message. Torres read it, her jaw tightening. They disqualified him as a donor. Her eyes went to Emma, to the failing monitors. When does she need the transplant? 72 hours, Sarah said numbly. Maybe less now. She's getting worse. Torres pulled out her phone. I'm calling the registry. This is obstruction, witness tampering. It won't matter. Terrence's voice was hollow. I have a separated shoulder, rib fractures, possible bone trauma from the accident. Any transplant coordinator will disqualify me on medical grounds alone. MedCorp doesn't need to interfere. They already did their damage 2 nights ago. Sarah looked at Emma, at her daughter's chest barely rising, at the machines doing the work her body couldn't. 72 hours to find a new match. Except matches for Emma's rare blood type and genetic markers took months. Sometimes years. Emma didn't have years. She had days. Test him anyway, Sarah said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. What? Terrence asked. The injuries, they're external, mostly. Separated shoulder, bruised ribs. But your bone marrow, test it. See if it's still viable. Sarah's voice grew stronger. They tried to kill you. They tried to disqualify you. But what if they failed? What if you can still donate? Sarah, even if my marrow is healthy, the registry won't clear me with these injuries. Then we don't go through the registry. Sarah looked at Agent Torres. This is a federal investigation now, right? MedCorp tried to prevent a life-saving transplant to maintain profit from a dying child. That's conspiracy to commit murder. Can't you override the registry's decision? Torres hesitated. It's not that simple. Medical decisions require a doctor's approval, interrupted a voice from the doorway. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo stood there, Emma's original specialist before MedCorp had pushed her out and replaced her with Dr. Howell. She was in her 60s, with sharp eyes and a reputation for fighting insurance companies. Dr. Okonkwo. Sarah stood. What are you doing here? Agent Torres called me an hour ago. Asked me to review Emma's case files. She walked to Emma's bedside, studying the monitors with a practiced eye. I've been going through the records. Every dosage increase, every failed treatment response. I should have seen it sooner. The pattern was right there. You couldn't have known they were diluting. I should have questioned why a medication that worked for 2 years suddenly stopped. Why Emma kept getting worse despite increased doses. Dr. Okonkwo's voice was thick with guilt. I failed her. I won't fail her again. She turned to Terrence. Show me your medical records from the accident. For the next 20 minutes, Dr. Okonkwo reviewed everything on her tablet. Terrence's x-rays, blood work, injury reports. She made calls to the transplant coordinator, to a bone marrow specialist, to someone Sarah couldn't identify. Finally, she looked up. The injuries are significant, but they're orthopedic, not hematological. Your bone marrow production appears unaffected based on your blood counts. She met Terrence's eyes. You could donate. The risk is higher than normal because of the trauma, but it's possible. Then let's do it, Terrence said immediately. It's not that simple. The registry has protocols. With your injuries, they'll never approve you. We'd need, Dr. Okonkwo paused. We'd need to perform an unregistered directed donation, meaning Emma's mother formally requests you as her donor, bypassing the registry matching system. Can we do that? Sarah asked. Legally? Yes. Ethically? Yes. But it requires hospital approval, and given that MedCorp has significant influence over this hospital's board. I'll handle the board. Agent Torres stepped forward. This is now a federal case. MedCorp's influence ends today. Then we test him, Dr. Okonkwo said. Now, if his marrow is viable, we have 48 hours to prep for the transplant. Hope flickered in Sarah's chest for the first time in days. But Terrence was staring at his phone again, his face ashen. What? Sarah demanded. What now? He showed her a new message. From the same unknown number. A video file. Terrence pressed play. The footage showed a hospital corridor. Night shift. Mostly empty. A figure in scrubs approached a medication storage room, using a keycard to enter. The angle changed. Security camera from inside. The person methodically removed medication bottles, replacing them with identical containers. The timestamp, 6 months ago. The location, Metro General Hospital Pharmacy. The person's face as they turned toward the camera, clearly visible, Dr. Patricia Okonkwo. Sarah's blood turned to ice. That's not possible, she whispered. Dr. Okonkwo wouldn't. It's fabricated, Torres said immediately, taking the phone. Deep fake, edited footage. Is it? Terrence asked quietly. He pulled up another file from the message. Because they sent this too. Pharmacy logs. Showing Dr. Okonkwo's access card used to enter the medication storage room. Dates matching the video. All within the time frame when Emma's medication was diluted. Dr. Okonkwo's face had gone grey. I haven't used that access card in years. I don't even work in that department anymore. We know, Torres said. They cloned your credentials. This is a frame job. Another message appeared. This time sent to multiple recipients. Sarah could see the forwarding list. Hospital administration. Medical board. Local news stations. FBI field office. Subject line. Whistleblower exposed. Doctor falsified records. Endangered patients. The email contained the video, the pharmacy logs, and a detailed confession supposedly from Dr. Okonkwo admitting to switching medications as part of a profit-sharing scheme with generic drug manufacturers. They're destroying her credibility, Terrence said. If she's accused of the very crime we're trying to expose MedCorp for. Then she can't approve the transplant, Sarah finished. No hospital will let a doctor under investigation for medication tampering perform a bone marrow procedure. Dr. Okonkwo sank into a chair. I'm done. Even if we prove this is fabricated, the accusation alone will suspend my privileges. I can't help Emma now. Sarah's phone rang. Hospital administration. She answered on speaker. Ms. Miller, this is Gerald Hartwick, Hospital Legal Counsel. We've received disturbing information regarding Dr. Okonkwo. Effective immediately, her privileges at Metro General are suspended pending investigation. Any treatment plans she's initiated for your daughter are on hold until we assign a new attending. No, Sarah said. Excuse me. I said no. Dr. Okonkwo is Emma's doctor. I refuse any replacement. Ms. Miller, you don't have a choice. Then I'm transferring Emma to another hospital. Tonight. A pause. Your daughter is in critical condition. Moving her could. Could what? Kill her? She's dying here anyway because your hospital is in MedCorp's pocket. At least somewhere else, she might have a chance. Sarah hung up. Agent Torres was already on her phone. I'm calling University Hospital downtown. They're not affiliated with MedCorp. If we can get Emma transferred. She won't survive the transport, Dr. Okonkwo said quietly. Look at her monitors. Her system is too unstable. Moving her now would be lethal. Sarah looked at Emma. The monitors were declining again. Oxygen saturation dropping. Heart rate erratic. They were trapped. Emma needed a transplant within 48 hours. Terrence was the only match. Dr. Okonkwo was the only doctor who knew Emma's case and was willing to fight MedCorp. But MedCorp had just destroyed Dr. Okonkwo's credibility and trapped Emma in a hospital they controlled. There has to be a way, Sarah whispered. There has to. Emma's monitors flatlined again. Code blue, someone shouted. The crash team rushed in for the second time that day. Sarah was pushed against the wall as they swarmed her daughter. Through the chaos, she saw Terrence on his phone, making a call. Saw Agent Torres arguing with someone in the hallway. Saw Dr. Okonkwo standing frozen, helpless, destroyed. Saw Emma's small body jerking under defibrillator shocks. Clear. Nothing. Again. Charging to 150. Sarah's knees buckled. This was it. Emma was dying. Right here. Right now. And there was nothing Sarah could do to stop it. Clear. A beep. Weak, irregular, but present. Emma's heart restarted. Barely. The lead doctor looked at Sarah with grim eyes. She won't survive another crash. Her system is shutting down. Without immediate intervention, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. Sarah slid down the wall, her head in her hands. Terrence knelt beside her. Sarah, I just talked to Marcus Webb. The story goes live in 2 hours. Everything, the dilution scheme, the evidence, your testimony. Once it's public, MedCorp can't hide anymore. It won't matter, Sarah said numbly. Emma will be dead in 2 hours. Then we have 2 hours to find another way. There is no other way. Terrence gripped her shoulders. You saved my life with your last $10. You refused their bribes. You stood up to armed men. You faced down the FBI and hospital administration and $1 billion corporation. You don't get to give up now. My daughter is dying. Because I was supposed to save her. Terrence's voice cracked. Don't you see? This whole thing, you finding me in that parking garage, you spending your last money to get me to the ER, you keeping me alive through that night, it wasn't random. It was supposed to matter. I was supposed to be Emma's donor. I was supposed to save her life because you saved mine. That's how this story ends. Not with her dying while I watch. Sarah looked at him through tears. Then tell me how. Tell me how we save her. Before Terrence could answer, Agent Torres ran back into the room, her phone in her hand. We have a problem, she said. A federal judge just issued an emergency restraining order. MedCorp's lawyers filed it 10 minutes ago. They're blocking the transplant. On what grounds? Dr. Okonkwo demanded. They claim Terrence Cole is a witness in their corporate espionage case. They're arguing he stole proprietary information and therefore is a criminal defendant who cannot participate in medical procedures until the case is resolved. Torres's face was grim. The judge granted a temporary restraining order. 21 days minimum before a hearing. 21 days. Emma had hours. Sarah looked at her daughter, at the failing monitors, at the future disappearing in real time. Then she looked at Terrence. At Agent Torres. At Dr. Okonkwo. Then we don't wait for permission, Sarah said quietly. Everyone stared at her. What are you suggesting? Torres asked carefully. I'm suggesting we perform the transplant anyway. Tonight. Here. Without hospital approval. Without the court's permission. Without waiting for MedCorp to finish killing my daughter. Sarah stood, her voice steady despite the terror in her chest. Dr. Okonkwo, can you do it? The marrow extraction and transplant? Without official approval. Dr. Okonkwo's eyes widened. Sarah, that would be illegal. Yes. Career-ending. Probably. But would it save Emma? A long pause. Possibly, Dr. Okonkwo finally said. If Terrence's marrow is viable. If we can prep Emma quickly enough. If there are no complications. It's incredibly risky. Riskier than watching her die. Dr. Okonkwo looked at Emma. At the monitors showing a child running out of time. No, she admitted. Not riskier than that. Agent Torres stepped forward. I can't officially sanction this. If you proceed, I can't protect you from the legal consequences. I'm not asking you to, Sarah said. I'm asking you to look the other way for 6 hours. Torres was quiet. Then, I didn't hear this conversation. I'll be in the cafeteria if anyone needs me. She walked out. Dr. Okonkwo pulled out her phone. I'll need a surgical team I can trust. People willing to risk their licenses. I know people, Marcus said from the door. Nurses who've seen what MedCorp does. Surgical techs who care more about patients than politics. Give me 20 minutes. He left. Sarah looked at Terrence. Are you sure? They'll come after you for this. Let them come. Terrence rolled up his sleeve. Test my marrow. If it's viable, we do this. Tonight. Dr. Okonkwo nodded and left to prep. Sarah and Terrence stood alone in the room with Emma, listening to her labored breathing. If this works, Sarah said quietly, If you save her life. Then we're even, Terrence finished. You saved mine first. Sarah's phone buzzed. Marcus Webb. Stories Live. The message read. Front page of every major outlet. MedCorp stock is crashing. Justice Department just announced an investigation. You did it, Sarah. She looked at Emma, still dying despite their victory. What good was justice if it came too late? The door opened. Dr. Okonkwo stood there in surgical scrubs, her face set with determination. We're ready, she said. The team's assembled. The surgical suite is prepped. Terrence, we need to do the marrow extraction now. Sarah, her expression softened. This is your last chance to back out. Once we start, there's no going back. If anything goes wrong, we all face criminal charges. You could lose custody of Emma. I'll lose my license. Terrence could face assault charges for performing an illegal medical procedure. Sarah looked at Emma one last time. Then at Terrence, who was already walking toward the door. Let's save my daughter, Sarah said. They were wheeling Terrence toward the surgical suite when the elevator doors opened. Dr. Howell stepped out, flanked by hospital security and a man in an expensive suit Sarah had never seen before. Stop right there, Dr. Howell commanded. That patient is under federal restraining order. You're all in violation. Marcus Thompson stepped between them, his hand on his security badge. Sorry, sir. Medical emergency in progress. You'll have to wait. I'm the attending physician on this case. No, Sarah said, stepping forward. You're not. You're fired. Dr. Okonkwo is Emma's doctor now, and we're proceeding with her treatment plan. The man in the suit smiled coldly. Ms. Miller, I'm Jonathan Reeves, MedCorp's chief legal counsel. That treatment plan violates a federal court order. If you proceed, you'll be charged with contempt, your daughter will be removed from your custody, and everyone involved will face criminal prosecution. Then prosecute us, Sarah said. Sarah, Terrence started. No. Sarah turned to face Reeves fully. You've spent 6 months poisoning my daughter. You ran Terrence off the road to prevent him from saving her life. You've threatened us, bribed us, framed an innocent doctor, and corrupted every system designed to protect children like Emma. So yes, Mr. Reeves, come after us. Arrest us all. But you'll have to wait until we finish saving my daughter's life. And by then, the whole world will know exactly what MedCorp did to her. Reeves's smile vanished. You're making a massive mistake. Behind him, the elevator dinged again. The doors opened. A dozen news cameras spilled out, lights blazing, reporters shouting questions. Marcus Webb pushed through the crowd, his press badge visible. Mr. Reeves, he called out. Marcus Webb, investigative journalism. Can you comment on the federal indictments expected tomorrow? Is it true MedCorp executives orchestrated a hit-and-run to prevent a child from receiving a bone marrow transplant? Reeves's face went white. More reporters surged forward, cameras rolling, microphones thrust toward his face. In the chaos, Dr. Okonkwo nodded to her team. They rushed Terrence into the surgical suite. Sarah followed, leaving the circus behind. The last thing she heard was Reeves shouting, "No comment. This is a private medical matter." And Marcus Webb's response, "Then why did your company try to kill a dying child's only donor?" The surgical suite doors closed. Dr. Okonkwo looked at her team, 6 people who are risking everything for a stranger's daughter. "We have 4 hours until hospital administration overrides us," she said. "Let's make them count." The marrow extraction began. Sarah watched through the observation window as they prepped Terrence, his eyes meeting hers through the glass. A nurse handed Sarah a consent form. "This acknowledges the risks. For both Terrence and Emma. Sign here." Sarah signed without reading. Whatever happened next, they'd face it together. The extraction took 90 minutes. Terrence emerged pale and exhausted, but the marrow was viable, healthy, undamaged by the accident. Now came the hardest part. Emma's transplant. They prepped her tiny body for the procedure. Sarah stood beside her, holding her hand, whispering every prayer she remembered and inventing new ones. Dr. Okonkwo began. The marrow infusion would take hours. Hours where Emma's failing system had to accept Terrence's healthy cells. Hours where any complication could kill her. Sarah watched the bag of marrow, dark red, miraculous, containing her daughter's only hope, drip slowly into Emma's foreline. One drop at a time. Life, measured in milliliters. How long until we know if it worked? Sarah whispered. 24 hours minimum, Dr. Okonkwo said. But if her body rejects it, we'll know much sooner. Sarah nodded and settled into the chair beside Emma's bed. She didn't notice when Terrence joined her, sitting on Emma's other side. Didn't notice when Agent Torres slipped in, standing guard at the door. Didn't notice when Marcus Webb published a follow-up article titled "Mother Defies Federal Order to Save Daughter from Corporate Killers." She only noticed Emma. Her daughter. Breathing. Fighting. Living. For now. The first 12 hours passed in agonizing slowness. Emma's monitors remained unstable. Her body temperature spiked, then dropped. Her blood pressure fluctuated wildly. Is this normal? Sarah kept asking. It's her body recognizing foreign cells, Dr. Okonkwo explained. We won't know if it's acceptance or rejection until... Emma's monitors flatlined again. This time, there was no code team. Just Dr. Okonkwo and her secret surgical team, working desperately in an ICU room while hospital security tried to break down the door Agent Torres was blocking with her federal authority. Come on, Emma, Sarah begged, holding her daughter's limp hand. Come on, baby. Fight. The monitors stayed flat. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Dr. Okonkwo prepared the defibrillator. A beep. Weak. Irregular. But present. Emma's heart restarted on its own. The monitors stabilized. Still weak. Still critical. But alive. Dr. Okonkwo checked the marrow infusion site. She's accepting it. Her body's fighting, but it's accepting the transplant. Sarah collapsed into the chair, sobbing. They'd done it. Maybe. Possibly. If Emma survived the next 12 hours. If the transplant took hold. If MedCorp didn't find a way to stop them. If the legal system didn't tear them apart. Too many IFS. But it was more hope than Sarah had felt in 6 months. Outside the room, she could hear shouting. Security demanding entry. Agent Torres citing federal authority. Dr. Howell threatening everyone with prosecution. Inside, Emma breathed. And that was enough. For now. Sarah looked at Terrence, slumped in his chair, exhausted from the extraction. Thank you, she whispered. He just nodded, too tired for words. They sat together through the night, watching over Emma. Waiting. Hoping. Praying. At hour 18, Emma's eyes opened. Mama. Her voice was barely a whisper. Sarah leaned forward, tears streaming. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Am I better? Sarah looked at Dr. Okonkwo, who was studying the monitors with cautious optimism. You're fighting, Sarah told Emma. And you're winning. Emma smiled weakly, then drifted back to sleep. At hour 24, Dr. Okonkwo ran new blood tests. The results came back an hour later. She looked at Sarah and Terrence, her eyes bright. The transplant is taking. Emma's body is producing new, healthy blood cells. It's early, but, her voice cracked. I think she's going to make it. Sarah couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. Emma was going to live. Against every odd. Despite every threat. Through every impossible choice. She was going to live. Terrence took Sarah's hand. We did it. You did it, Sarah corrected. You saved her. No. Terrence shook his head. You saved her. The day you spent your last $10 on a stranger. Everything that followed came from that choice. Before Sarah could respond, the door burst open. Not security this time. Federal marshals. Led by a man in a suit carrying official documents. Sarah Miller, he said. You're under arrest for contempt of court, reckless endangerment, and conspiracy to commit medical fraud. He read her rights while snapping handcuffs around her wrists. Behind him, more marshals arrested Dr. Okonkwo. Terrence. The surgical team. Everyone who'd saved Emma's life. Agent Torres tried to intervene, but the lead marshal cut her off. Federal judge's order. Issued 20 minutes ago. Everyone involved in the unauthorized transplant is being charged. They led Sarah out in handcuffs. The last thing she saw was Emma, sleeping peacefully, finally healing. Worth it, Sarah thought. Whatever happens next, it was worth it. As they pushed her into the elevator, she saw Jonathan Reeves standing in the hallway, his cold smile back. I warned you, he said softly. MedCorp always wins. The elevator doors closed, and Sarah realized, with sinking dread, that saving Emma's life might have been the easy part. Now came the fight to keep her. The holding cell was cold. Sarah sat on the metal bench, still in her hospital clothes, the handcuffs finally removed. Across from her, Dr. Okonkwo leaned against the wall, her face drawn. Terrence paced despite his injuries, his phone confiscated hours ago. They'd been arrested at 6 p.m. It was now past midnight. No one had told them anything about Emma. Sarah's chest felt like it was caving in. Her daughter was alone in that hospital room, possibly dying, while Sarah sat in a cell because she tried to save her. The door opened. A public defender entered, young, overwhelmed, carrying a stack of files. Ms. Miller? I'm Jennifer Costa. I've been assigned your case. She sat down heavily. I'm going to be honest. This is bad. Federal contempt charges, violation of a court order, performing unauthorized medical procedures on a minor. The prosecutor is pushing for immediate custody transfer. They want Emma removed from your care tonight. Sarah's world stopped. What? They're arguing you're a danger to your daughter, that you subjected her to an illegal medical procedure without proper authorization, that you conspired with a known corporate whistleblower facing criminal charges. I saved her life. I believe you. But legally, you violated a federal restraining order. The judge who issued it is furious. He's calling an emergency hearing in 30 minutes to determine Emma's custody. Jennifer's voice softened. I'll do my best, but you need to prepare for the possibility that... No. Sarah stood. No, they're not taking her. I did everything right. I protected my daughter from people trying to kill her. If this system is so broken that saving a child's life is a crime, then... The door opened again. Agent Torres walked in, her face grim but determined. Behind her, an older woman in an expensive suit Sarah had never seen before. Ms. Miller, the woman said. My name is Catherine Chen. I'm Mrs. Chen's daughter, and I'm your new attorney. Sarah blinked. Mrs. Chen's daughter. My mother called me 6 hours ago. Told me everything. Catherine opened her briefcase, pulling out documents. I'm a civil rights attorney. I've spent 20 years fighting pharmaceutical companies, corporate malfeasance, and systemic corruption. And I'm about to dismantle MedCorp's entire case pro bono. Jennifer Costa looked relieved. Catherine Chen? I've read your cases. The Valdez settlement, the Peterson class action. All precedents I intend to cite tonight. Catherine turned to Sarah. The emergency hearing starts in 20 minutes. We're going to walk into that courtroom, and we're going to win. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Sarah looked at this woman, Mrs. Chen's daughter, who dropped everything to help a stranger. Yes, Sarah whispered. Good. Because we're going to war. 20 minutes later, Sarah walked into a federal courtroom in handcuffs, flanked by marshals. The gallery was packed, reporters, activists, and to Sarah's shock, dozens of families she'd never met, all holding signs, "Save Emma and MedCorp kills children." At the prosecution table sat Jonathan Reeves and a team of MedCorp lawyers. At the defense table, Catherine Chen stood like a warrior ready for battle. Judge Harold Morrison entered, late 60s, stern face, reputation for no-nonsense rulings. He looked at Sarah with undisguised disapproval. "Ms. Miller, you stand accused of contempt of court, conspiracy, and child endangerment. How do you plead?" Before Catherine could speak, Sarah said, "Guilty of saving my daughter's life, Your Honor." The courtroom erupted. Morrison slammed his gavel. "Order. Ms. Miller, you will address this court with respect." "With respect, Your Honor, my 8-year-old daughter is in intensive care right now because a pharmaceutical company has been poisoning her for 6 months." Sarah's voice didn't waver. They diluted her medication to increase profits. They ran her bone marrow donor off the road to prevent her from getting a cure. And when we tried to save her life, they hid behind legal paperwork to finish killing her. So if I'm guilty of contempt, then charge me. But don't tell me I endangered my child when I'm the only one trying to protect her. Silence. Morrison stared at her. "Counselor Chen, you have something to say." Catherine stood. "Your Honor, the prosecution's case is built on a false premise. Yes, my client violated a restraining order, but that order was issued under fraudulent pretenses. MedCorp claimed Mr. Cole stole proprietary information. In fact, Mr. Cole documented criminal activity, specifically, systematic medication dilution affecting 3,000 children nationwide. The evidence has been verified by the FBI and is now subject to a federal investigation." She laid a stack of documents on the judge's bench. "This is Agent Rebecca Torres's sworn affidavit confirming MedCorp's criminal enterprise. This is Dr. Patricia Okonkwo's analysis proving the medication dilution. And this," she held up a tablet, "is tonight's publication by Marcus Webb detailing everything." Reeves shot to his feet. "Objection. That article is biased journalism, not evidence." "Then explain this," Catherine said calmly. She pulled up footage on the courtroom screen. Security camera video from Metro General's parking garage. Date stamp, 2 nights ago. The video showed Terrence on his motorcycle. Then a black SUV deliberately ramming him, sending him crashing into a concrete pillar. The SUV's license plate was clearly visible. "That vehicle is registered to Sentinel Security Services, a MedCorp subsidiary," Catherine said. "This was attempted murder, Your Honor. Not an accident. Murder. To prevent Mr. Cole from donating bone marrow to Emma Miller and curing her dependency on MedCorp's profitable medication." The courtroom exploded again. Morrison hammered his gavel. Reeves was pale. "That video is, we had no knowledge of. Your company hired the security firm. Your company discovered Mr. Cole was Emma's donor through illegal access to medical records. Your company orchestrated a hit-and-run to kill him." Catherine's voice cut like steel. "And when that failed, you used the courts to finish the job. This restraining order isn't about protecting proprietary information. It's about murdering a child slowly enough to avoid criminal liability." Morrison's face had gone from stern to horrified. "Mr. Reeves, is this true?" "Absolutely not. MedCorp had no knowledge of any alleged hit-and-run." Catherine held up another document. "This is an internal email from MedCorp's legal department, obtained by federal warrant this afternoon. Dated 3 months ago. Subject line, Problem, Cole-Miller match." The email explicitly discusses eliminating the donor issue before transplant authorization. She read aloud, "Recommend immediate action to disqualify donor through medical or legal means." Patient dependency must be maintained. The courtroom went deathly silent. Morrison looked at Reeves with pure contempt. "Counselor, are you telling me your client conspired to prevent a dying child from receiving life-saving treatment?" Reeves had no answer. Catherine pressed on. "My client violated your restraining order to save her daughter from corporate murder. If that's a crime, Your Honor, then I invite you to convict every parent who would do the same. But know this, the world is watching. 3,000 families whose children were poisoned by MedCorp are watching. And history will remember what you decide tonight." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Sarah. "Ms. Miller, where is your daughter now?" "In the ICU, Your Honor. She had the transplant 6 hours ago. Dr. Okonkwo says she's responding well, but..." Sarah's voice broke. "I don't know. They won't let me see her." Morrison's jaw tightened. He looked at the marshals. "Release Ms. Miller immediately. Release all defendants." He turned to Reeves. "Your restraining order is dissolved. Your motion for custody transfer is denied. And you can tell MedCorp's executives that I'm referring this entire matter to federal prosecutors for immediate investigation." He slammed his gavel. "This hearing is adjourned." The courtroom erupted in cheers. Sarah stood in shock as the handcuffs came off. Catherine embraced her. "You're free. Go see your daughter." Sarah ran. She burst into Emma's ICU room at 1:30 a.m. to find her daughter awake, color returning to her cheeks, breathing on her own for the first time in days. "Mama." Emma's voice was weak but clear. Sarah collapsed beside her bed, sobbing. "I'm here, baby. I'm here. I'm never leaving again." Behind her, Terrence appeared in a wheelchair, exhausted but smiling. "How is she?" Dr. Okonkwo entered, reading Emma's latest labs. "The transplant is taking. Her blood counts are improving. She's not out of danger yet, but..." She smiled through tears. "I think she's going to make it." Sarah held Emma's hand, feeling her daughter's pulse strong and steady. They'd won. Against impossible odds, against a billion-dollar corporation, against a system designed to protect profit over people, they'd won. The door opened. Agent Torres walked in. "Thought you'd want to know. Federal agents arrested MedCorp's CEO an hour ago, along with 6 executives and 14 co-conspirators. The charges include conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted murder, obstruction of justice, and about 40 other counts." She smiled. "It's over. They're done." Sarah looked at Emma, at Terrence, at Dr. Okonkwo, at everyone who'd risked everything to save one little girl. "Thank you," she whispered. "All of you. Thank you." 3 months later, Sarah stood in the same parking garage where everything had started. She held a cup of good coffee, the kind she could finally afford. Emma was healthy, thriving, her new bone marrow producing perfect blood cells. The transplant had worked. MedCorp had been dismantled. Its executives faced decades in prison. The diluted medications had been recalled, replaced with real treatments funded by a federal emergency program. 3,000 children were getting the medicine they'd been denied. Sarah had testified before Congress, had become an advocate for pharmaceutical transparency, had started a foundation to help families navigate medical debt. But today, she was just meeting an old friend. Terrence's motorcycle pulled into the garage, a new bike, this time. He parked and walked over, moving easily now that his shoulder had healed. "Ready?" he asked. Sarah nodded. Together, they walked to Emma's school. She was waiting outside, healthy and happy, wearing a backpack and a bright smile. "Mama, Mr. Terrence." She ran to them. Terrence knelt down. "How was school, kiddo?" "Good. We learned about bone marrow today in science. I told everyone you saved my life." "Your mama saved both our lives," Terrence corrected, looking at Sarah. "I was just returning the favor." Emma took both their hands. "Can we get ice cream?" Sarah laughed. "Absolutely." As they walked together towards Sarah's car, a reliable one now, with a working starter, she thought about that night in the parking garage. About the impossible choice. About her last $10. About how sometimes, being too late to save everyone was exactly the right time to save someone. Too late. Terrence asked, echoing the question from that first night, the words that had been on the thumbnail, the fear that had driven everything. Sarah looked at Emma, healthy and whole and alive. She looked at Terrence, who'd become family. She looked at the future they'd fought for and won. "Right on time," Sarah answered, smiling. "We were right on time." And for the first time in years, Sarah Miller believed it. They'd all been exactly where they needed to be, exactly when they needed to be there. Too late to play it safe. Right on time to change everything. The end. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to turn on notifications, so you're notified every time I release a great story like this one. If underdog stories like this one resonate with you, take a moment to check our channel. You'll find a full catalog of powerful underdog stories, stories of the overlooked, the silenced, and the underestimated who rise and triumph. Thank you for watching.